The universe, it thinks it's so damn clever. The Galactic Coalition brought their gold-plated data pads to the table. They wore their pristine ceremonial robes. They smiled with all three of their mouths and offered us the Orion sector. Well, they called it a gesture of eternal brotherhood. It was a ruse. A beautifully calculated lie. They wanted us to disarm our outer rim installations. They wanted our defense grids lowered so they could sweep in with their dreadnoughts and claim our prime real estate without chipping their polished armor. It was basic galactic math. But nobody ever explained that kind of logic to humanity. See, the coalition thought we were naive. They saw our open hands and assumed we were blind to the trap. They thought we were sliding into the mud, ready to sign whatever paper kept the peace. God, they were wrong. We knew it from the very first second. We knew it when our deep space arrays picked up the wet, rhythmic clicking of their cloaked fleet engines idling right outside our border rings. We knew it because human history isn't written in gold ink. It's written in trenches. In betrayal. In the freezing mud of our own home world. We didn't call them out. We didn't throw a tantrum at the council table. Instead, we just signed the paper. We smiled back. And then we went to work. By the night of the ratification, the coalition fleet moved in. They targeted our unshielded research outpost on Sector 4. They didn't even broadcast a warning. Why bother? To them, we were just pests. Just ants to be stepped on. The primary dreadnought, a massive, 8-foot-tall brute of a warship, dropped right out of warp above our command dome. Their shock troops blew the airlocks. The atmospheric seal failed instantly. The rushing void, it bit into our lungs like shards of glass. Standing right in the center of that smoke-choked deck was Admiral Vance. Vance was 65. His knees were shot from a dozen zero-G drops. He was bleeding from a nasty shrapnel gash above his eye, the dark red fluid matting into his grey beard. He didn't have a railgun. His terminal was blinking a dull, dead red. The alien commander stepped onto the deck, his power armor gleaming under the emergency lights. His mechanical translator clicked a wet, metallic rasp. Your defense grids are deactivated, the machine droned. Your logic centers must dictate submission. Walk away now. The commander expected Vance to drop to his knees. He expected a fragile human to beg for mercy now that the trap had sprung. But, well, nobody expected what happened next. Vance didn't run. He didn't sign a surrender. Instead, he let out this ragged, ugly sound. It started as a wet cough, then turned into a genuine, hysterical chuckle. He wiped the hot blood out of his eyes, spit a dark red glob right onto the alien's polished boot, and took one heavy step forward. You guys really think you're the first bastards to lie to us? Vance whispered. His voice was cracked like old leather, but it did not shake. He didn't raise a weapon. Instead, he reached slowly into his pocket and pulled out an old, mechanical spark tool. A welding lighter. Total primitive junk. The alien commander didn't even flinch. His kinetic shield could easily absorb a plasma bolt, let alone a spark. He actually let out a mocking laugh through his vocalizer. But Vance wasn't aiming at him. He was looking straight down at the deck plates. Specifically, at the main fuel conduit he had manually ruptured 10 minutes before they boarded. Highly volatile, invisible hydrogen gas was already pooling right beneath the alien's heavy boots. See, alien logic says you only fight when the odds are in your favor. You live to compromise. But human logic? When we know you're coming to take everything we love, when you break your word before the ink is even dry, we stop thinking about survival. We think about spite. We think about making the other guy pay. We want you to regret picking the fight. Vance looked that giant dead in its cold, black, multifaceted eyes. We knew it was a lie, Vance said. And he pulled the trigger. All caps for emphasis can't describe the absolute hell that tore through that sector. Kinetic shields are brilliant tech. Truly. They deflect bullets. They absorb lasers. But they do not stop a sudden, massive vacuum created by a localized hydrogen cook-off inside an enclosed bulkhead. The blast didn't shatter the aliens' armor. It did something worse. It suffocated them instantly. It collapsed their lungs. The fire consumed every single drop of air inside that command deck in a fraction of a second. The giant alien soldiers froze, choked, and toppled forward into the ash like chopped oaks. Vance! The shockwave threw him 30 feet backward into a pile of scrap metal. 3 broken ribs. A punctured lung. Half his hair singed down to the scalp. But when the rest of the coalition fleet tried to coordinate the secondary attack, the sky didn't belong to them anymore. The disarmed defense grids didn't shut down. They calibrated. 200 hidden railgun platforms, buried deep inside the hollowed-out asteroids we pretended to abandon, opened fire at point-blank range. Through the smoke of the burning station, Vance was already moving. He was using a bent piece of structural pipe to leverage his weight. Shaking violently. Spitting dark fluid into the dirt. He stood. On 2 broken legs. He didn't back down. He looked at the tactical feed as the coalition fleet began to burn, held up 2 bloody fingers in a crude, ancient gesture, and dared them to stay. They didn't. For the first time in their imperial history, the coalition armada broke formation and fled into deep space. The equations were broken. The math had failed them. How do you calculate an enemy that signs your peace treaty just to buy enough time to trap your entire army in a meat grinder? They never crossed our borders again. The galaxy thinks we're fragile because our bones snap under pressure and we bleed when we're cut. They think we're weak because we sit at their tables and listen to their lies with a straight face. They see our willingness to trust and they assume it's fear. But they forget that fear is exactly what makes us so damn dangerous. Because when a human realizes the peace was a lie, and there is absolutely nothing left to lose, that is when the real fight begins. So, next time you try to trick humanity with a piece of paper, don't wait for us to figure it out. Just run.